Are you dependent, independent, codependent? What are you? Now, if you don't know, listen to this video because it might change your life. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and if you want to listen and watch more content like this, hit that subscribe button. Today I want to talk to you about how we are, or how I was generally taught is the best way to live, which is by being independent. Be independent, because if you're independent, you're on your own, nobody can affect you, all that kind of stuff. And one of the good things about being independent is, yeah, you can decide exactly what you want to do, and all those kind of like good things. But there are also negative parts about being independent. It's that it's lonely. It's that it's hard to get there on your own. It's if you're doing it for yourself and just yourself, who are you really doing it for? Some people say friends and family, and sharing it with loved ones. And that's the reason that we should, get things done. But anyway, back to the independent piece. So I always thought that was the best way to be. Now, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think it was that book, talks about this. And it says, independent is a good way to be. It is one way to be. Now, imagine the flip side of independence, being completely on your own, is being not codependent, is being dependent. So independent on your own. Dependent is when you're dependent on somebody else. So independent is you don't need anybody else. You're completely fine on your own. Dependent is where you're not fully yourself without somebody else. So you could have relationships, friendships, whatever, romantic relationships, where you're not completely yourself without that other person. Now this has got a lot of negative points, because without them, you're less, and it can also become a bit of a burden to those people if you're not perceived to be adding value. I don't know what your relationship's like, but that's imagine the dependent side. So you got independent, where you're completely self-functioning, which I thought used to be the best way to be. Then you've got dependent, which is, I don't want to be dependent or beholden to anybody. That's another way that you can be. And I thought it was a choice, linear choice between this or that, right or wrong, my way or the bad way. However, there is a third alternative. And I'll be doing more videos about third alternatives and the third option, because I used to always think it was yes or no, right or wrong, this way or that way. But if you think of it like that, then you're either right or you're either wrong. It's either good or it's either bad. But if you think in terms of degrees, then imagine this. Imagine if you say you did something completely right. I say, could you have done it another way? You say, no. There's no other way I could have done this. You say, okay, but is there any, could you have done anything else? You say, no, it was either right or wrong. And that was my old mindset. Because if I wasn't right, then I must be wrong. However, there is a third alternative. And the third alternative is kind of like saying, okay, so you can imagine that you're 100% right. And you could imagine that you could have been 100% wrong. So you can imagine the flip side of that. Could you imagine 1%, you could have said one more thing, one more word, you could have phrased something in a slightly different way, and you could have got maybe a little bit more information that could have helped you in a certain way. And you say, well, yeah, no, I could understand I could get slightly more. Or in my mind, the way that I actually thought about it was, could you imagine that you could have done slightly worse? Say, yes, well, I could have done slightly worse. I couldn't have said that interesting thing that I said. I wouldn't have mentioned that point. Say, okay, so imagine 100% is right, and you could have done slightly worse. Maybe 3% worse. I can imagine that. You don't have to, but if you can comprehend that you could be 3% worse, or you didn't say a couple of words right, now flip it and say, well, if I can imagine I could have been slightly worse and not been as perfect as I was, is there a possibility that I might have been 1% right, 1% better if I would have said certain other things? You say, well, yeah, I can imagine, there was a slight possibility. And that's how one of my friends begrudgingly helped me kicking and screaming and realise that there is a third alternative. It's not right or wrong. It's not yes or no. It's this, that, or other options. Now, if you think of it like that, then life becomes less of a competition and less of a battle, because it also kind of speaks to the abundance and scarcity mindset. So if, there's one way or the other way, if you don't do it right and you do it wrong, that means that also if there's a scarcity, there's not enough. You don't need to, you can't have too many wrong decisions, because the more wrong decisions you have, the worse your life's going to be. However, if you think of it in terms of like a continuum, where you say, well, maybe it was a little bit worse, maybe it was a little bit better. Let's see how it goes through the fullness of time. Let's try and understand how that goes. So anyway, got a bit off track there, but imagine we're now going back to that independent one way, dependent the other way. And now imagine there's that third alternative. So I used to think being on my own was the best way, and having no ties, no connections, all that kind of stuff, being militantly focused. Then I used to think that the worst way was being completely dependent on somebody. God, I can't rely on other people. How, I'd be just waiting around for ages. Now imagine that one level higher is where two independent people come together. Bash. Completely, fully functioning, not dependent on each other. They come together and they say, hey, why don't we create a third alternative where it's not your way or my way, it's not right or wrong, it is our way. So I don't need you, you don't need me, but together, if we work together, we could really get somewhere. And that third alternative is codependence. So you're not dependent on somebody, but you're codependent. You're working together to rely on each other. And by acting in a codependent manner, that is the best. That is the third alternative, and that is the way that we can create these things that are outside ourselves. Create third options where if you're on your own, you might not do so good, or you do the best of your own ability. However, if you were working in concert with somebody else, that they didn't need you, you don't need them, but together you really do make a good team. By doing that, it actually shows you that you can achieve a lot more together than you can alone, and that's one of the mind shifts that I went through from listening to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm going to re-listen to that book again, just because we can make our lives so much harder if we're not thinking of things intelligently. And because we're not thinking of things intelligently, doesn't mean that we're, doing things wrong, or, whatever negative words you can think of. It just means that there might be a slightly better way. And asking yourselves, could there be a slightly better way, is a lot better. And I get a lot less defensive when I ask myself that question than saying, am I right or am I wrong? Because if you say, am I right or am I wrong, you say, I'm right, which means that you must be wrong. However, if there is a third alternative, you can both be right, you can both work together, and it can really help you improve what you could get. Now, I think this goes to the point of it really matters who you have around you and what influences you're listening to. And when you're trying to improve yourself, are those influences happy for you? Are they cheering for you? Are they also trying to influence and improve their lives? Because if they're not, it can really have a negative impact on you. And it's worthwhile weeding out some of the negative influences that you have, if you have negative influences. Or just toning them down a little bit in your mind, realising that you don't need to react to everything. You can respond. You can take your time. Nothing is that urgent. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, I'd love to know what your thoughts are about independent, codependent, and dependencies. If you've changed your opinion, if you've listened to these books, and what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and if you want to see more of this content, subscribe, and we'll be coming to you every single day. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later. Hi guys, thanks for coming to my channel. This is where we're going to be looking at audiobooks and how we can improve what we can do and what we can learn from some of the best audiobooks in the world. And I want to let you in on a little secret.
If you're not a fast reader, I'm not either. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be conquering that with audiobooks. We can listen to the audiobooks. I'll show you how. And if you have any questions, let me know. So let's get into this. I look forward to going on this journey with you.